Hello, I am the cartoonist M. Rashid. I've looked through some of my earlier arguments and cartoons and seeing my growth. And some of that old stuff can be enlightening in how I grew, and some of it can be downright embarrassing because of how wrong I was. This cartoon is one of those. I did this in the summer of 2020, and it was before I discovered that Nicole Hannah-Jones had been lifting the work of Tone and Yvette, the two co-founders of the ADOS movement, using it for her own stuff, but not actually citing them. And when they, reached in to let her know, she, got defensive and mad about it, So the depths of how far that went had escaped me, that I was being over generous in giving her the benefit of the doubt at the time. I didn't know how deep that was. The same thing with everyone's favorite red commie spy economist. Like, I didn't know what was actually going on behind the scenes and what Yvette had saw him say, and she kept those cards close until later when he was tripping, and then if I didn't know that stuff, so I ended up making some cartoons supporting these people, and looking bad in the attempt because I didn't know what I didn't know. But in this particular case, I'd been following Nicole Hannah-Jones stuff for a while. Like, her desegregation work was extremely powerful to me. I was blown away by it. I was very impressed with the work and her courage in presenting it, And I often still cite it, even after finding out what what she had done. And very disappointed, hurt, like generally hurt, And I'm reading through. I made this cartoon as a cover to a discussion I had with a couple of the ADOS activists, and I called myself admonishing them for being so harsh on Nicole Hannah-Jones. I thought, at taking her at face value, I thought that the roles between the hardcore activists who are uncompromising and presenting the truth of what the data shows, personified in Tone and Yvette, with the public intellectual figure, which in this particular case I thought was still truthful, but for whatever reason they had favor with the mainstream and could get in access into circles and stuff that the hardcore activists wouldn't, because of their the harshness of their message. That's what I thought at the time. I didn't realize and didn't see that the public intellectual is often compromised and given that access because they're willing to compromise and throw the hardcore activists under the bus. So I've been patiently waiting for what seemed obviously the book from Nicole Hannah-Jones about the depths of where that desegregation thing went. That we're just as desegregated the schools are just as segregated now as they were in 1970, as I often quote from her, and how powerful that was. That white flight was their response to the Brown versus Board of Education decision, and it was never corrected. It was a big part of systemic racism and the wealth gap, is how they deal with education, you know. So that was powerful. I just knew that when this book drops, the white racist aristocracy is going to be shook, and I could not wait. And it never came. It never came, and the left showered her with its top prizes. It's relevant because you pointed out that the biggest culprits of the segregation thing was the white left itself. So magically, she abandoned this super project that had them clearly shaking in their boots. And in the abandoning, they showered her with all their top, most prestigious, most awards. And she never looked back. And in fact, she started using ADOS talking points for herself and then attacking ADOS, helping the enemy smear us. So I was clearly in the wrong for going to bat for her. And for a long time, I held on to the idea that she would turn it around. And when she did the 1619 project and was supposed to follow it up with the reparations piece, and none of that worked out the way I had hoped it would. So on the other side of all of that, I'm looking like a fool and very embarrassed. Even looking at this cartoon, it's embarrassing. My intention was to show that the difference between the uncompromising warrior activist versus the softer public intellectual who's able to take their message and make it more palatable to give it over. But that's not what this represents. This represents theft, compromise, lack of integrity, and just watching my people deal with the same stuff we've been dealing with for centuries now, inside of a new era, watching the same scenarios unfold that unfolded during the civil rights era between those figures. So it's hurtful, you know. Well, I apologize to Tony and Yvette formally for not seeing what I needed to see at the time and making this cartoon. But I thought Nicole Hannah Jones was actually our friend. I had a brief back and forth with her during the time, thinking that, you know, she's a reasonable person. All we got to do is talk to her. And she was, no. And then she said something to me like, she'd seen some of my caricatures of her before, but I wasn't going out of my way to make fun of her and that, and I just used her as a character for something. I thought she was the real deal. Like I mentioned before, that in my original walk here, where I wanted my little Afro character to represent the an eclectic mixture of super activists, and I considered her part of that. But as I went through my journey, one by one of the activists that I had in my list started dropping off, because eventually they would show themselves to be not right. And this one here is one of the last ones I had to strike off my list. And even she said, I'm not an activist, I'm a journalist, so I can get away with doing dirty shit. Or whatever she said. In that same vein, that's how it fell on me. So but you can't grow without coming across stuff, and it doesn't help anything not to confront those things face on when you come to them. If I didn't, then it would make me like my enemy, right? I have to be where I need to be in order I can get better in this space and learn more and be, a more effective artivism or artivist support for my beloved ADOS movement. So that's where this cartoon came from. Peace.